Next on Currents News, Jersey City under siege. Schools across the city on lockdown as SWAT teams move in after a deadly ambush of police officers. And 2 guards are injured in an attack at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Plus, House Democrats unveiled 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. And a joyful celebration of diversity. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio presides over the immigration mass at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph's. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Lydia Serrani. We begin with breaking news. A police officer is dead tonight after a wild shootout on the streets of Jersey City. Several more were wounded, and officials say multiple others killed. SWAT teams and emergency personnel have been called in from throughout the region for the active shooter situation. At the time of this newscast, all schools in the area remain on lockdown. The school closest to the gunfire, Sacred Heart Catholic, located just right across the street. Currents News reporter Jessica Easthope is on the scene now with the very latest. Jessica?
Lydia, this story is continuing to unfold. There's still a massive police presence here, and officers are continuing to swarm the area. We're here on Bayview Avenue, and at the top of this block is Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, where JC Kosher Supermarket is. And unfortunately, Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop has confirmed multiple people are dead inside, including 2 suspects and 3 civilians. This police pursuit involving suspects driving a U-Haul truck started just a few blocks from here at New York-based Cemetery. According to multiple sources, suspects led police on a chase from the cemetery to the store, where they engaged in a shootout with police before barricading themselves inside. Again, 1 officer, 2 suspects, and 3 civilians are dead. 3 other people, including 2 officers, were injured and are in stable condition. As we mentioned, all schools in the area have been placed on lockdown. We spoke with parents and grandparents of students at Sacred Heart, the Catholic elementary school just feet from the store police are pursuing. They were terrified, desperate for answers, and just wanting to get to their children. Let's take a look.
Heard like a pow, 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 a bunch of pow, pows, like over 100 bullets being shot.
How scary is it for you that your grandchild is in school?
Yeah, I'm scared. I know she's scared too, you know. And see, look, I don't want. This scares me. And I'm just standing there waiting, and they just actually shooting.
It hit home. It hit close to home. You know, we see it on TV all the time, and it happens in other states, and you feel sorry for the parents, and you being a parent yourself kind of hits you in the chest. And today was just the most nerve-wracking it's ever been. I just want to grab my baby and bring her home with me.
Multiple sources have identified that Jersey City police officer who was shot and killed as a married father of 5. Parents are now lining this block, Bayview Avenue. It's the closest they've been able to get to their children all day. Police here on the scene say they're waiting to get that scene on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive under control before evacuating the school, 25 students at a time. In Jersey City, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Thank you so much, Jessica. A tragic situation there. Now, Currents News will stay on top of the shootout story and have comprehensive coverage on tomorrow's Currents newscast. Now to Washington, D.C., the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception also became a crime scene today. 2 security guards at the largest Catholic church in America were critically injured when a suspect went on a vicious rampage. Currents News' Tim Harfman is here now with the latest details. Tim?
Yeah, Lydia, chaos ensued at the usually peaceful basilica this morning. According to D.C. police, the 2 victims are in stable condition and the suspect is in custody. This man is under arrest tonight in connection with an attack on a male and female security guard. According to Washington Metropolitan Police, the suspect and 2 victims know each other.
We believe there is some sort of a domestic relationship between the female victim and the suspect here.
Police said shortly after 9 this morning, the individual attacked the female security guard outside the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. He allegedly struck her twice with an SUV. When a male security guard rushed to help her, the suspect jumped out of the vehicle and stabbed him inside of the basilica. The suspect fled the scene and barricaded himself in a home about 4 miles from the basilica.
Members of the emergency response team responded here. They were able to establish communications with the suspect, and the suspect eventually came outside and gave up to police.
The suspect was transported to a local hospital with minor injuries. The two victims are said to be in stable condition. According to a spokesperson for the Basilica, the lower church of the shrine was on lockdown during the police investigation, but has since reopened. The upper church remained open the entire time, and noon mass was celebrated as usual. No visitors or guests of the shrine were harmed. Again, police believe this was domestic violence and not an attack against the shrine or the Catholic faith. The investigation is ongoing. Lydia?
Now, Tim, the Catholic University of America is located right near the Basilica. Was the university put on lockdown?
Well, according to one student that I spoke with, no, but an email blast did go out to students and faculty urging them to stay away from the area around the Basilica. That student also told me that they are in the middle of finals week, so there weren't as many students and faculty members on campus. Lydia?
Thank you so much. Thankfully, no one else was hurt. House Democrats are preparing charges against President Trump. 2 articles of impeachment were unveiled this morning, bringing Trump to the brink of becoming the 3rd president ever to be impeached. Karen Caifa has the latest from Washington.
The first order of business for members of Congress is the solemn act to take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Committee Chairman announcing 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump.
We must be clear. No one, not even the president, is above the law.
One article, abuse of power. The second, obstruction of Congress. Both related to the president's dealings with Ukraine and the investigation into his actions. The Democratic majority in the House makes it all but certain that Trump will become just the 3rd U.S. president to be impeached. Democrats debated but opted not to pursue a 3rd article of impeachment on obstruction of justice related to the Mueller report, instead arguing the Ukraine matter illustrates a pattern of behavior on the part of the president.
To do nothing would make ourselves complicit in the president's abuse of his high office, the public trust, and our national security.
After the announcement, President Trump tweeted, "Witch hunt." Republicans have been sharply critical of the speed of the proceedings, repeatedly attacking Democrats' moves less than 1 year before an election at a public hearing on Monday.
At the end of the day, all this is about a clock and a calendar.
The House Judiciary Committee will meet later this week to consider the articles, the lead up to a full floor vote. In Washington, Karen Caifa, Currents News.
The Justice Department released a report debunking conspiracy theories as the motivation behind the investigation into alleged collusion between the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia. The report sparking strong reactions from both sides of the political aisle, including the president himself. There was no illegal wiretapping. There were no informants inserted into the campaign. There was no spying on the Trump campaign. Former FBI Director James Comey in a Washington Post opinion piece defending the FBI's role in the investigation into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Finally, the truth gets told.
This report conclusively debunks the baseless conspiracy that the investigation into Mr. Trump's campaign and its ties to Russia originated with political bias.
Despite shutting the door on deep state conspiracy theories, the Justice Department Inspector General's report did find significant errors on how the FBI conducted the investigation, including at least 17 inaccuracies and omissions in applications for surveillance on former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page.
You cannot surveil somebody unless you have proof they're a foreign agent. If I were Mr. Carter Page, I'd hire me a lawyer. I'd sue the hell out of the United States.
The FBI says it's taking more than 40 corrective actions.
It's an embarrassment to our country. It's dishonest. It's everything that a lot of people thought it would be, except far worse.
The FBI's director, Christopher Wray, who Trump appointed, backed the report's findings, causing the president to lash out at him. In a tweet today, Trump wrote, "I don't know what report current director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, was reading, but it sure wasn't the one given to me. With that kind of attitude, he will never be able to fix the FBI." And on the newscast tomorrow, political expert from St. John's University, Professor Brian Brown, will discuss how the impeachment battle will affect the 2020 presidential election. That will be on tomorrow's newscast. There are new details tonight about the deadly terror attack on the U.S. naval base in Pensacola, Florida. The investigation is focusing now on links with Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis have sent a high-ranking diplomat to Florida to deal with the fallout. Bryn Gringus reports the latest.
In an ongoing global investigation, FBI agents in Pensacola, Florida are focusing on several Saudi nationals connected to the man who opened fire in a classroom of the Naval Air Station, killing 3 sailors.
This is something that should not have been allowed to happen.
The Saudi nationals who trained with the gunman are being restricted to base, a confinement that is causing tension between the two countries and spurred a Saudi defense attaché to arrive on base and assist, according to someone familiar with the investigation.
I can tell you that we are looking very hard at uncovering his motive.
The FBI is trying to determine if the Saudi gunman sympathized with a certain ideology and is analyzing digital evidence. A Twitter account that aligns with the identity of the killer retweeted profiles of prominent Islamist clerics with ties to al-Qaeda. That account posting a chilling message minutes before the attack, declaring hate for Americans because of their crimes against Muslims. The social media footprint has spurred some lawmakers and White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien to draw a firm conclusion.
My point is, it looks like terrorism.
A declaration the president hasn't yet made. Instead, Trump continues to pass along sentiments from the Saudi leadership, most recently following a conversation with the Saudi Crown Prince Sunday.
He's very, very devastated by what happened. King Salman of Saudi Arabia just called to express his sincere condolences.
The repeated praise is again drawing questions about whether he's too sympathetic to the Saudis and is strikingly similar to the aftermath of the murder of American journalist Jamal Khashoggi, when Trump maintained support of Saudi Arabia, even as details tied Khashoggi's killers to the highest levels of the Saudi government. Even staunch Trump supporters were less sympathetic to the kingdom and more demanding of their cooperation than the president.
I made the point as clearly as I possibly could that we want no interference from the kingdom as it relates to Saudis that we have, and if there are Saudis that we do not have that may have been involved in any way.
Bryn Gingras refiling that report. Now, later today, the Navy grounded the Saudi military trainees at the base indefinitely. The FBI hasn't made a connection between the shooting and a cyber attack against Pensacola that's impacted the city's ability to do business. The Supreme Court has left a Kentucky abortion law in place that mandates an ultrasound be done. The High Court declined without comment to hear an appeal brought by the American Civil Liberties Union. The law requires doctors to describe an ultrasound in detail while a pregnant woman hears the baby's heartbeat before they can perform an abortion. The law was passed in 2017. House Democrats and the White House have reached an agreement on a new trade deal with Mexico and Canada. This is a victory for President Trump, who pledged to remake the North American Free Trade Agreement. House Speaker Pelosi is calling it a victory for American workers. The pact contains provisions to create more manufacturing jobs. The House is expected to ratify the agreement next week. The Washington Post is reporting that the American public was misled on the war in Afghanistan. The paper reports that the documents it obtained revealed that from the very beginning, top officials concealed doubts that U.S. troops would be successful. This is being compared to the Vietnam-era Pentagon Papers, the documents painting a picture of missteps and failures in Afghanistan. There have been over 2,300 deaths during the war. And there's a lot more news headed your way. Celebrating diversity in Brooklyn and Queens, Bishop DiMarzio presided over the Migration Day Mass at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph's. The tradition of the peace light lands in America, a flame from the grotto in Bethlehem, where Christ was born, is now making its way across the country. And the Holy Father visits an exhibit that has been bringing nativity scenes from around the world to Rome for decades. A celebration of the diversity found in the Brooklyn Diocese when Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio led the Migration Day Mass on Saturday. Hundreds attended, including a woman from Nigeria who found her home in the church. Currents News' Tim Harfman has that story.
A joyous display of Christian unity in the Brooklyn Diocese when families with roots all over the world celebrated the Migration Day Mass.
Even though we come from different places, but still we worshiped one God.
For Saturday's service, Ifeanyi Izizi and her kids dressed in the traditional garb of their homeland, Nigeria. She remembered arriving to the U.S. 10 years ago and what happened the next day at her Queens parish.
I came on the Saturday. My first outing is on Sunday to go to church, and oh my God, all of them, they already know my name.
Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio presided at the migration liturgy offered at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. He pointed out that Christ himself was a migrant.
We recognize that migration is part and parcel of our history as Christians, and many Christians, for many reasons, migrate.
Catholic Migration Services organized a special mass. Year-round, they are hard at work, supporting the diversity of the diocese.
You really see the universality of the church and the universality of our diocese, which is really the Diocese of Immigrants.
Driving home that point, prayers during the liturgy were spoken in more than a dozen languages. For the hundreds of Catholics at the Mass, the overwhelming sentiment was gratitude, thankful for being together as one church. In Prospect Heights, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Direct from the Holy Land, there was a whole lot of light at JFK Airport this weekend as a symbol of peace landed in New York City. The peace light comes from the grotto in Bethlehem, where Christ was born. Every year, the flame travels to the Queens Airport as its first stop in America. From there, Boy and Girl Scouts from across the diocese take lanterns of the light back to their parishes. The leaders and scouts talk about what the flame means to them.
It's symbolizing a light shining to the world, and how Jesus brings light in darkness.
It's just one thing that represents peace in the world. And I think that's something that we all need.
It just brings more peace to our Christmas season.
The Scouts are tasked with keeping their peace light lit throughout the Advent season. After Three Kings Day, the flame can die out. Bethlehem is preparing for its best Christmas in 2 decades. After 3 years of relative peace, the small Palestinian city is expected to be flooded with tourists. As pilgrims descend on the birthplace of Jesus, there is a push by locals to have tourists stay rather than returning to Israel after a few hours. 5 new hotels are being built and a number of guest houses have recently opened. And the opening hours for the Church of the Nativity have also been expanded. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad is telling Pope Francis that the Holy Father has an incomplete picture of the war in his country. After receiving a letter from Francis over the summer, Assad is now writing back. He's claiming that the mainstream narrative that a bad government is killing good people in Syria is wrong, and argue that the Assad government is very concerned about civilian lives. In his earlier letter, the Holy Father had urged Assad to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Syria. This Christmas season, Pope Francis has championed the display of the Nativity in public. Now, at the same time, the Vatican is hosting a magnificent exhibit of 100 Nativity scenes from around the world. As Melissa Butts reports, the Holy Father decided to pay a visit.
Pope Francis visited the exhibit Cento Presepi, an international show that's been bringing the most special nativity scenes to the Eternal City for decades. This year again, it's set up very close to the Vatican, and the Pope wanted to see for himself the creativity and variety in sharing the story from 2,000 years ago in Bethlehem. There he found nativity scenes made with new materials and others that were more traditional and conventional. Pope Francis walked through the exhibit greeting the visitors and artists from around the world who have recreated the birth of the Savior. Once the tour was complete, he said a short prayer and blessed the nativity scenes. The entertainment during the visit were these young Hungarians who sang some traditional Christmas carols for Pope Francis. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
A beautiful display there. There's also other important news from the Vatican. Pope Francis has named Manila Cardinal Luis Tagle as the new head of the Holy See's Department in charge of evangelization. He will be in charge of promoting the faith in the Church's vast mission territories. The department is one of the most important inside the Vatican hierarchy. Cardinal Tagle is set to take over early next year. Still to come on Currents News, how some churches are using the nativity scene to send a political message. And we'll also meet a brave little boy who, despite battling a life-threatening illness, is making Christmas bright for children spending the holiday in the hospital. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the Our Diocesan Family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments such as baptism, First Communion, confirmation, and marriage. For more information and to submit your pictures, go to tablet.org/Our Diocesan Family. We'll be right back. As churches around the world gear up to celebrate Christ's birth, some are using the classic nativity scene to send political messages. St. Susanna's Parish in Dedham, Massachusetts created a nativity scene to call attention to climate change. It features plastic bottles and drowned animals. The church is known for using their nativities for political messages. St. Susanna's pastor, Father Stephen Josoma, explains why.
The gospel calls us to action. It calls us to see life in a different way. It calls us to bring a different set of values into our world.
Meantime, a Methodist church in California is using their nativity to shed light on the refugee crisis in their creche. The Christ child, Joseph and Mary, were all placed in separate cages. In a Facebook post, Pastor Karen Racine said that the plight of the Holy Family is symbolic of refugees seeking asylum in America. And finally tonight, an uplifting story about a brave 9-year-old boy. He's collecting toys for kids in the hospital so that they are able to enjoy a very Merry Christmas. Now, at the same time, the boy is facing his own medical challenge. Reagan Porter has the story of Brecken Simmons and his plans to be one of Santa's elves.
What's your favorite color? Green.
Favorite movie? Elf. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
And favorite thing to do? Make people happy.
So we bought some V60 Meta headphones.
Brecken's second annual toy drive is now underway.
There's other kids that might be in the hospital over Christmas that are probably saying, I don't get Christmas this year, but take that negative away, put the positive in.
Of course, this 9-year-old is excited about the cool new toys.
A real Honda. That's real.
But Brecken finds happiness in providing a pick-me-up to toddlers and teenagers who made it at most in the hospital.
I'm hoping to make them happy. I want their faces to light up and make them happy.
As parents, it's great to see him just reaching out to others and helping others, especially with all that he's been through.
Brecken was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor at age 5.
We'll continue to fight that for the rest of his life. It's not one that can be removed because of its location.
Now, he's made it his mission to brighten the holiday by donating thousands of toys last year.
Maybe more of these we can always accept.
And even more this year to the Santa Shop at Children's Mercy.
Which is the shop that parents who are inpatient with kiddos can go down and shop for their kids and siblings at no cost to them.
New unwrapped toys only.
And that sound of more toys is music to Brecken's ears.
All I want for Christmas is my toys from my toy drive.
Nailed it. All right.
The true spirit of Christmas, and that was Reagan Porter reporting. Now, Brecken hopes to wrap up his toy drive with a big event on Saturday. Well, that's it for us here on Currents News. Again, I'm Lydia Serrani. Thank you so much for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time. Good night.